Dad was very kind to me, his daughter, but he loved alcohol and gambling, which caused Mom a lot of trouble. Weekdays were for slot machines, weekends for horse racing. Even when he won, he would drink. So, despite being a skilled carpenter with a good income, life was very difficult. Don't ever marry a man who loves drinking and gambling. Mom used to say that often. Dad passed away from liver problems when I was in junior high. After that, Mom raised me by working as a life insurance saleswoman. I went to a commercial high school, studied seriously, got my qualifications, and landed a job at a fairly large company. The times were prosperous. The whole world was in high spirits. My name is Hannah. I'm currently a 55-year-old housewife. I live peacefully in a single-family home with Frank, who is 9 years older than me, my son, his wife, and a 3-year-old grandchild, making us a family of 5. About 2 years after I started working at the company, I met Frank, who came as a car salesman, and we started dating. Frank, who is 9 years older, is kind, smart, and a good conversationalist. Perhaps due to his eloquence, he was a very successful salesman, and things were going very well. When we started dating, a major reason was that it was a time of economic boom. Back then, the economy was so good that even girls who didn't go to college were getting surprisingly high salaries and bonuses. The female employees around me were splurging on brand-name products and dining at upscale restaurants. It was an amazing time. I was never really interested in brand-name goods or gourmet food, but I was intrigued by the investments my boss talked about. Perhaps it's my gambling-loving dad's genes kicking in. I tried buying stocks with $1,000 from my bonus. It was only a $1,000 investment, but I was thrilled to see its value increase, leading me to invest in a few other stocks. I've always had good instincts since my student days, often guessing test questions right, but in reality, it was the blooming economy that kept most stocks rising. I couldn't tell my gambling-hating mom about my stock trading. In reality, while both gambling and investing involve luck, they are entirely different. By studying economics and global affairs and collecting data, you can significantly reduce risks. I learned a lot after I started stock trading. I sold most of my stocks at nearly their peak value before the recession. Maybe thanks to my studies and natural instinct, at just 22, I became a small-time rich person living off passive income. But I kept working my regular job and didn't tell anyone, including Mom, about my stocks. I even kept it a secret from Frank, whom I had just started dating. Frank's sales job suffered during the recession, but he still performed well thanks to his excellent sales skills. He wasn't interested in gambling or much of a drinker. He was a bright, good talker, and I saw him as a reliable adult man. I was increasingly drawn to him, and I remember being overjoyed when he proposed. He was 32, and I was 23 at the time. Our newlywed life started in a house with Frank, me, and Frank's dad. Frank's mom had passed away from a stroke 3 years earlier. I wanted to keep working until we had children, but Frank's dad was the old-fashioned type who couldn't do anything around the house. So, at Frank's wish, I became a housewife. When I got married, the house was a mess. I spent a while cleaning and organizing the house, and when that settled down, I got pregnant. As I considered our future, I was about to confess to Frank about the savings from my stock investments, but then I discovered Frank's affair. I was 6 months pregnant. Frank didn't drink or gamble, but he had one of the 3 major male vices, a bad track record with women. Despite not being particularly good-looking, his smooth talking often got him liked. Nowadays, society is strict about infidelity, but back then, a successful man like Frank cheating was unheard of, let alone him taking the lead in household chores and childcare. But that didn't make his infidelity any more forgivable. I considered divorce amidst tears and anger. Still, the thought of becoming a single mother held me back. He'll come back home anyway. I reached a point of resignation. In the end, I never told Frank about the stocks. For the savings, I thought as long as I had money, I could manage as a single mother if it came to that later. I continued investing mainly in stable stocks and occasionally in interesting companies, which often appreciated in value, making me a private shareholder with an annual $100,000 in dividends. I put in $3,000 a month for living expenses, so I managed everything with that. That's what Frank told me when we started our married life. According to Frank, If I gave all my salary to my wife and just took pocket money, it wouldn't motivate me in sales. Basically, he wanted to keep the commissions from selling his cars as is, spending money. Frank eventually became a sales office manager, but I still don't know how much he earns. At the time, I agreed with Frank's reasoning and was fine with him contributing that much for living expenses. In fact, Frank worked hard. Sales became tougher after the recession, but he still maintained the top sales in the office. He boldly used his extra income for his affairs. If my wife managed my salary, I wouldn't be able to spend money freely. Frank talked about sales motivation, but he really wanted free money for his affairs. Looking back, it's clear now, but by the time I realized it, it was too late to change anything. Our son Nicholas was adorable, and Frank loved him, but Frank's infidelity didn't stop. We lived days that weren't too unhappy. Every family has its issues, doesn't it? When I met with my girlfriends, we all shared similar stories. Inside, thinking back, the hardest years might have been when Nicholas was in 3rd grade, and my father-in-law developed dementia, leading to years of caregiving and parenting. After father-in-law passed away and Nicholas finished his high school entrance exams, our life finally settled down. Then my mom passed away. I never got to tell her about my stocks or savings. I had planned to tell her once things calmed down and take her on an overseas trip. Life passes faster than you think, and delaying problems only leads to regret. Mom, I'm sorry I couldn't show my gratitude enough. I still apologized to her at her grave. Mom and I both didn't have a good eye for men. Excuses like business trips or company outings to avoid coming home seemed unlikely for a sales manager nearing 60 to have so many trips. He used similar excuses when he frequently cheated in the past, so I caught on quickly. Are you cheating again? When I asked, he tried to brush it off with a vague lie, just like old times. You're past 60 with grandchildren? Isn't it time to stop? I said, more in disappointment than anger, which seemed to hit a nerve. Enough. It's not an affair. I'm serious this time. I think this is my last love, he defiantly confessed. Something unbelievable. Serious love, not just an affair. This was shockingly hurtful. Maybe I was still a bit smitten with Frank, believing he would always come back to me despite his affairs. Love at your age? Are you kidding me? I raised my voice. How dare you call your husband stupid? Do you know who you have to thank for living without any hardships? A housewife is just a parasite. I'd be fine with the divorce. This was the first time Frank, despite his numerous affairs, mentioned divorce. Was it a sign that it wasn't just an affair, but something more serious this time? It was strange for Frank to suggest divorce. If it were just an affair, it should be me, the wife who's been cheated on, to bring up divorce. As we were arguing, Scarlett, who had been putting the grandchild to bed, came in. What's going on? Why are you two raising your voices? She asked. He's cheating again, and now he says a housewife is a parasite, and he's okay with divorcing me, I explained. She responded in disbelief. Then I'm a parasite too, leaving all the housework, childcare, and caregiving to Hannah while freely cheating. Have you ever thought about how Hannah has felt all these years? What's this, teaming up against me? Frank, unaccustomed to being challenged by women, was flustered. With a husband like this, wouldn't a single mother be better? I would leave him right now. I should have stopped tolerating and divorced him sooner. What are you talking about? You couldn't have survived with a child if we had separated. You lived carefree for decades as a housewife, like a parasite, without any hardship. Raising a child alone and caring for father-in-law wasn't easy. I certainly wasn't living carefree. It was because I took on everything that Frank could focus on work and even find time for his affairs, I said. Thinking about it made me unbearably angry. Don't worry about me. If we divorce, I'll make sure to claim a hefty alimony from you and your mistress. Frank's face paled when he heard about the alimony. I never knew you were such a greedy woman. This is ridiculous. Saying this, Frank stormed out. He probably went to see the woman he claimed was his serious affair. The ridiculous one is him, right? Hannah, Nicholas's wife, looked at me worriedly. I sighed. You know, even with Frank being who he is, I dreamt of us holding hands and walking together as we got older. I never imagined Frank would fall in love with another woman as we neared our 60s. Sounds silly, doesn't it? Saying it out loud, it felt like such a modest dream, and the sadness of it being unattainable brought tears to my eyes. "Hannah, you're not silly at all," she was tearing up too. Just then, Nicholas returned home late from work. "What's wrong? Why are you both crying?" Nicholas was confused seeing us in tears. After explaining what happened, Mom, "If you've decided, then I think it's the right choice. I don't hate that, but I know you've been crying. You endured it all for me, right?" "I'm sorry, Mom," he said. I decided then to settle 30 years of grievances. Cost didn't matter. I hired a skilled detective to investigate the mistress's background and address and gather evidence of the affair. Then I found a capable lawyer to consult about the alimony claim and divorce proceedings. A month later, on Christmas Day, a pale-faced Frank came home to find everything ready. "What's this about alimony?" He panicked after receiving the alimony claim from the mistress. "Your lady friend is Madison, 31, a bar employee. She's currently seeing 2 other men beside you. Looks like she's meeting them during the day while you're at work. A classic case of playing the field." The thought of Frank believing that a woman younger than Nicholas was seriously in love with him was almost pitiful. No way. That can't be true. His disbelief was understandable, though. He probably didn't want to believe it. "It's true. Here are the investigation results. I've got solid evidence." "You hired a detective? What are you doing with the money I earned?" Frank, agitated, tried to blame me. "Relax, I haven't used any of your money," I said, spreading out 3 debit cards in my name in front of him. "What's this, huh?" Frank double-checked the numbers on the debit cards. "I'm sorry I kept it a secret. I'm a stockholder with an annual dividend of $100,000, so even if we divorce, don't worry about me. I'll be just fine." Frank was overwhelmed, unable to process that his serious love affair was involved with 2 other men, and that his wife, whom he called a parasite, was actually a wealthy woman. His mind hit capacity overload, and he fell silent, unable to comprehend at all. "You've been playing the stock market with my earnings?" "No. I used the money I saved before we were married. I never touched what you contributed to the household. This card with fewer digits, that's from your contributions. I'll keep it as my security deposit." "Wait, maybe we don't need to divorce. I'll break up with her." I thought as much. People say money blinds, and in this case, I think the amount was definitely blinding. That's why I couldn't tell him before. I dreamt of revealing it when Frank retired, thinking we'd travel abroad. I was so close to fulfilling that dream. It's too late. I'm leaving this house. The house isn't worth much anymore. It's old and the land is leased. Do whatever you want with it. My lawyer will handle the rest. Goodbye. With that, I left the house I'd lived in for years with my son, his wife, and my grandchild. It took some time, but I eventually got a call from my lawyer that Frank had signed the divorce papers. And that's how I finally parted ways with my unfaithful husband. Now, we live in a new high-rise apartment. The area has been redeveloped with high-rise apartments, but it still remains a relaxed downtown feel. I was shocked. Think, Mom could buy a high-rise apartment in cash. Never knew she was that wealthy, Nicholas said thoughtfully. I had a hunch when we went shopping. She often used stockholder discount coupons. She even gave some to me. That's right. You'd notice living together. Frank didn't realize for decades because he left everything at home to me. Uh-oh. Am I in trouble too? Nicholas looked genuinely worried, so we both laughed. Don't just rely on Hannah's wealth, okay? If you quit your job, I'm divorcing you, she said, emphasizing the point. With a wife like her, Nicholas will be fine. Nowadays, it seems like it's not all about hard work. When I was young, I couldn't imagine it, but investing has become common with various services available lately. Nicholas's wife has started investing too, and she's doing quite well. As for Frank, he apparently broke up with his serious love. Apparently, the other woman became furious and caused a scene when she was asked to pay the alimony claim. But that's not my concern. I intend to ensure she pays her share too. There's a fitting penalty for such betrayal. It's not about the money, but I plan to claim part of Frank's retirement benefits as property distribution for the marriage period. Dad called again. He's lonely in that house after retiring, turned down re-employment offers and seems to be withdrawing, Nicholas said with slight concern. I mostly hear about former Frank through Nicholas. To me, Frank is a stranger after the divorce, but he's still Nicholas's father. I have no intention of forgiving that man, but I understand why Nicholas is concerned about his dad. But he's a stranger to me now. I don't want to know anything about him. Right, of course. You're the one who suffered. Sorry, I'll never forgive him, but I'll help if you're in trouble. If former Frank keeps withdrawing and ends up sick or with dementia, Nicholas will likely have to care for him. There are circumstances where it's not as simple as saying it's none of my concern. He's an idiot. Tell him he can see his grandchild if he finds a job. Another one's coming like this. We all laughed at Nicholas's wife's slightly harsh but clever suggestion. Once divorced spouses become strangers. That's why we must cherish our relationships, she said thoughtfully. Growing old together peacefully and in harmony is quite challenging, but you two seem to be doing just fine. I sighed as I spoke. I wondered how many couples actually manage to have such a golden age. Oh, come on. You keep talking about old age, but you're still young, Hannah. Now that you're free, there's no reason you can't fall in love again. That was something I hadn't considered as I looked surprised. She suggested something more astonishing. How about my dad? I'd be so happy if he and you got together. I had only met her father a few times. He seems like a nice, kind gentleman. Oh, please, it's not that simple. I know, but we only have Dad in May. And thinking about the future, I get worried. I see. That explains it. It was her concern for her father living alone that prompted her suggestion. Then we should invite your dad over more often for meals together, I suggested. She replied, yes, getting to know each other is a start, she said, half joking, half serious. She might be earnestly trying to set me up with her father, though. Uncertain about the future, I felt a flutter of excitement and uplifted spirit.